So while I hope you had the time to enjoy the little drama queen freedom fighter moment you had there, I hope you'll allow me to cosplay as a book. A book. Never heard of one. Okay, I'll help you. The 1948 war, or shall I call it the self-inflicted Nakba, started the 30th of November 1947, the morning after the acceptance of the partition plan in the U.S. Assembly, which split the land into an Arab state and a Jewish state. And just a quick side note, we are talking about the partition plan that came after 77% of the mandate was already given to the Arabs. Who cares, am I right? It doesn't really fit the narrative that Jordan was also Palestine. Anyway, it's the morning after the partition plan. Good morning, everyone. Just fucking kidding. Not good morning. The Arabs launch a civil war. Also, notice how I said Arabs and not Palestinians? Just like in the partition plan, they were Arabs and not Palestinians. It was a Jewish state and an Arab state, not a Palestinian state. Because back then, they were just Arabs, and the flag that you are using came 16 years after the war. So the civil war lasted until the last day of the British Mandate, which was the 14th of May, 1948. That's also when David Ben-Gurion officially declared the establishment of the State of Israel. Boom, trach, makara! 5 Arab armies invade the land of Israel the morning after. Somehow, Israel won. Oh no, the consequences of my actions! If only, and I know it's a crazy idea, they just sat their ass down after the partition plan was accepted, declared their own state, and not started a war, the war wouldn't have been started. Since they didn't do that, they don't get to sit down and cry victim because they lost the war that they started. You understand? It wasn't about a state in the past. It's still not about a state. And the problem in the future is also not a state. The problem is Jews. Jews! I know it's very difficult for you to understand, so let me try to get it in there. So the only thing I can assume you're talking about in 1953 is Kibia. And again, from the makers of We Fuck Around and We Don't Understand What Finding Out Means. Here is a list of terrorist attacks that came from the West Bank, controlled by Jordan back then, before the Palestinian identity was created. I'm going to write you the list of terrorist attacks from 1953 in the comments, because if I stay here and list them, we will never be done. That's just 1953. We didn't even do 1954, 1955. And I'm gonna end this by saying, you don't like finding out, don't fuck around. Don't do terrorist attacks if you don't like retaliatory actions. Again, 1956, before the Palestinian identity was created. Only war/operation that took place in that year is the Sinai War, or Mivtza Kadesh. It was started by Britain and France against Egypt. Israel did join the operation later on, but I don't understand why you'd even write that as in like, oh my god, the Palestinians are so oppressed. Look what happened in 1956. Stop inserting yourselves into shit you have nothing to do with. We made it! We made it! The Palestinians finally exist. So in this war, Israel was fighting Syria, Egypt, and Jordan, who had help from military delegations from Iraq, Lebanon, and Saudi Arabia. I could go into the crazy shit that neighboring Arab countries did before Israel launched its preemptive strike. Shit they were doing started right after Mivtza Kadesh in the late 50s, and of course during the entire 60s. It was in 1967 that Egypt did the most shit that broke the camel's back, including moving Egyptian troops and tanks onto the border with Israel in the Sinai Peninsula, signaling an aggressive posture, endless calls from Arab leaders for the destruction of the State of Israel, forming military pacts with Syria and Jordan, declaring the Straits of Tiran closed for Israeli shipping, the expulsion of the United Nations Emergency Force from the Sinai Peninsula. Can you imagine if Egypt just didn't do all that? Bingo! There wouldn't be a 67 war. 73. What happened in 70? Syria and Egypt launched a surprise attack on Israel in one of their holiest days. Does that maybe sound familiar to anybody? Does that ring a bell? Attacking Jews on their holidays? Anyway, the massive Arab failure in the Six-Day War shocked the entire Arab world because they were all really anticipating and looking forward to the complete destruction of the State of Israel. And so Syria and Egypt, they really thought this time. They really thought. So they reached out to a bunch of countries and they were like, can you help us destroy Israel, please? That was really humiliating. Of course, who wants to miss the opportunity to get to the party? Iraq, Jordan, Libya, Morocco, Saudi Arabia. Tunisia, and Kuwait all said choo-choo. And somehow, say it with me, they lose again. Who could have seen that coming? I'm gonna repeat this for the people in the back. Stop starting wars you can't finish. Again, really importantly, could you imagine if they just didn't attack that day? What would have happened? What would have happened? That's right, it would just be another normal day because Israel doesn't start wars. No idea what the fuck happened in 1979, but I would more than love to use this opportunity to list you the terrorist attacks that happened in Israel in 1979. Finally something that has to fucking do with the Palestinians. Besides the endless terrorist attacks from Palestinian terrorist organization in Lebanon, both in Israel and in other countries, that's what happens when you give Palestinian terrorist groups airplanes. By the way, if you still want to give them an airplane, that's fine. I'm just letting you know that's what a free Palestine means, so put your helmet on and get ready. The immediate trigger for the war was the assassination attempt of the Israeli ambassador in the United Kingdom, Shlomo Argo. Israel finally launches Operation Peace for Galilee, which was the original name of the war, with the objective to push the PLO 40 kilometers from the border in order to prevent further attacks. I know my boy did not just list the first intifada. I think the name speaks for itself, and I will give you the honor of looking up what happened on the first intifada. Again, we bring up another thing that has nothing to do with you. Those who were actually involved are Israel and Hezbollah. Operation was called Operation Accountability, and it also happened because Hezbollah would not stop attacking Israel. I know, crazy plot twist that never happened. And he brought the second intifada. Again, Google, please. Could go into every single year he has listed since, and I would actually more than love to. However, I think the objective has been achieved. There has not been, and there will not be, time where Israel starts shit. It's always somebody else. I can prove that going farther into every single year in the 2000s. Anything you bring me, anything that happens, I will prove to you did it first. The only reason you guys are so obsessed with the Palestinian narrative is because you're obsessed with victimhood. You're obsessed with oppression. You are obsessed with feeling guilty and wanting to save people. If Israelis acted the way the Palestinians are when it comes to the narrative, you guys would be licking our feet respectfully to get a taste of all the actual victimhood. However, we say no thanks. We don't need your pity. There has been a terrorist attack in Israel pretty much every single day since it has been established. I know your brain can't grasp that because you're disgustingly safe, but when I say almost every single day, I mean it. Verify me. The difference is we don't use that to play victims because we don't want to be victim. We are not your fucking victim. Every single one of these gives us the privilege to defend ourselves and reminds us that we have the right to defend ourselves. It reminds us why we need our country. It reminds us how strong and how resilient we are. Do you know what's worse than just sitting and weeping over bad shit that happens to you? Starting shit with somebody else, and then when they hit you back, sitting and weeping. I cannot imagine something more pathetic than that. So let's all hope for a day where the Palestinians stop acting like a victim, because they are not the victim. They have never been the victim. And unless you're ready and capable to actually start a war that will literally end our existence, don't start it, because you will sit and you will weep.